Episode 1 of The Witcher starts out with the Witcher, Geralt of Riva. He has just taken out a beast called a Kikimora, and he heads into a small town named Blavica. He heads into the local tavern and wants to know where the alderman is because he's planning on selling the Kikimora, but he's met with a little hostility. A bunch of people there don't want him because Witchers aren't fondly looked upon. The entire bar is about to attack him until a girl pops up and demands that they all stand down. She apologizes for how they acted and buys him a beer. While the two are drinking, a little girl walks in and asks how much he wants for the Kikimora, so he goes out to start bargaining with her. She claims that she is the daughter of the alderman, and in all honesty, her father's not going to have any use for a Kikimora because they're useful for population control. But there is a wizard who will pay for one for spells and elixirs and whatnot. And she agrees to take Geralt to the wizard. And on the walk, they exchange names, and she tells him how she's not scared of him, even though generally the word on the street about witchers is that they're from hell. They're the offspring of foul sorcery. They're a diabolical creation. You name a bad thing, that is what is used to describe a witcher. But luckily for Geralt, she doesn't buy any of it. They then arrive at the wizard's place, and he walks in, and he is greeted with a vision of a bunch of naked chicks picking fruit. I mean, it's a really delightful scene. But it's all fake because the guy that lives there is a wizard. And he meets the wizard, a guy named Master Straggerbor. But this is not the guy he was supposed to meet. He was expecting to meet somebody else. And Master Straggerbor goes on to admit that, yeah, that guy used to live here, and I kind of took his name. And it's a very weird situation, and Geralt doesn't exactly trust him. Pretty quickly, Geralt is able to discern that he must be in hiding if he's taking all these aliases. He also realized that he has been lured there by that little girl because Straggerbor doesn't actually want any of the monsters that he has. He wants the Witcher to go out and kill his monster. The issue is his monster is human, and Geralt isn't into that. And as Straggerbor goes on to explain the person who is hunting him, a girl named Renfrey, Geralt realizes that Renfrey was the person in the bar who had all of her men stand down and then bought him a beer. And the reason that she is after him is because of revenge. It all stems from this ridiculous legend, the Curse of the Black Suns, where on the first full eclipse in 1200 years, legend has it that someone named Lilith was going to come down and wipe out humanity. Now, according to the legend, Lilith's path was supposed to be set up by 60 women who could fill the river valley with blood. So Straggerbor had studied the girls that were born around the Black Sun. And what he found was all of these internal mutations around them. Now, the only way you find an internal mutation is if the person is dead and you do an autopsy, so that's exactly what he did. He would kidnap them, put them in isolation, hope for the best, but anytime they acted out, he would kill them, autopsy them, and then confirm his suspicions. But while Straggerbor sees it like he was protecting the human race, the Witcher sees it like you just killed a bunch of innocent people because of a legend. And to that, Straggerbor says that it was the lesser of two evils. And Geralt doesn't believe in the lesser of two evils. If it's evil, he's not interested. Now, back to Renfrey, she is one of those girls. She is the princess of Creighton, who was born around the eclipse, and Straggerbor is convinced that Renfrey fits the description that he laid out because she used to abuse animals when she was a kid. So Straggerbor took it upon himself to take her out, sending a guy to follow her into the woods, but he ended up dead. Renfrey then disappeared for 2 years, but then she popped back up, killing merchants and whatnot. She had developed all these new skills, and now she is close by to get her revenge on Straggerbor for trying to kill her first. So Straggerbor wants Geralt to go and kill this girl. He even goes on to say, name your price, but Geralt says no. He's not willing to kill a person. Even after Straggerbor's impassioned plea, Geralt still walks out. He then goes to the woods around town where he's met by Renfrey, who now wants to tell him her side of things. And it was basically that everything was simply self-defense, and she wants to hire the Witcher to kill Straggerbor. But Geralt gives her the same answer he gave Straggerbor. No, I'm not doing it. He even goes on to give her an ultimatum. You can continue to go after him, or you can leave. Be done with it. But if you go after him, I'm going to try to stop you. So she thinks about it and tells him that she has decided to leave town and heed his advice. She also then seduces him. And all of a sudden, he dips into this really weird dream state where he's got Renfrey in it, but she's talking about this mysterious girl in the woods. And when he wakes up, he realizes that she has put a spell on him. So he heads into town where he's greeted by those same men from the tavern who are there to hold him up from getting to Straggerbor. They tell him that Renfrey ordered them to give him a message. You have to choose the lesser of two evils. Either let her go to the tower or try to fight his way through about 7 guys. He chooses the latter, and he makes very quick work of them. I mean, they didn't even really put up a fight. Renfrey then pops up out of the shadows, and she has the little girl that was working for Straggerbor at knife point. She throws the little girl to the side, and the two get into a very heated sword fight. And while she is able to injure Geralt ends up getting the best of her. But Renfrey's last dying words to him were that there's a girl in the woods who will be with him always, She is his destiny. Now, Geralt has no idea what she's talking about, so he just drops the body there. But when Stregobor finds out that she's dead, he shows up to autopsy the body, although that is something that Geralt cannot let him do. And because Geralt is in Stregobor's way, Stregobor is able to rally the townspeople against Geralt. All of the townspeople start throwing rocks at him, and even the little girl who brought him to Stregobor urges him to leave town. Now, the girl that Renfrey was talking about is this princess named Cirilla, and she is the princess of a city called Cintra. And life seems to be good in Cintra until they find out that they're pretty close to being attacked. And this forces both of her grandparents to go out to the battlefield, where they're waging war against this other country called Nilfgaard, but Nilfgaard is getting the better of them, and to make things worse, the reinforcements aren't coming. Now, of course, Cirilla has no idea what's going on because she's back in the castle, and she is pissed off about it. It is her, a soldier, and their wizard. And she doesn't understand why she can't be out there with them. The wizard tells her of a legend where, in the past, sorcerers would lock up these little girls in towers because the girls were supposedly cursed, and these girls were supposed to bring on the end of the human race. So what would happen to the girls? They would end up getting killed. And he's, of course, alluding to the fact that that is why she's in the castle being protected and not out on the battlefield. She's too valuable. She is also the next in line to take over the throne, and that might be another reason why she's not allowed on the battlefield. Oh, by the way, she's like 11. It's no place for a child. I don't care what era it is. Either way, she doesn't really buy into cautionary tales. Later on that night, though, her grandmother does come back, and her grandfather has died, gotten shot in the face with an arrow, and her grandmother isn't doing too much better. Cirilla is worried that her grandmother is going to die, which she does end up dying. But before she does, she tells Cirilla that she will be taking over the crown soon, even though she's not really ready. The castle walls are then breached, and the only thing keeping the Nilfgaard soldiers from entering the castle is the wizard putting up this invisible, impenetrable wall. Now, the wall won't fall until the wizard does, but he can't stand there forever, and eventually he's got to move, and soldiers are able to force their way in. As the soldiers are coming in, one of the soldiers is handing out poison so everybody in the building can kill themselves before they're captured. But Cirilla's grandmother lets the wizard know that he needs to get Cirilla out of the castle at all costs, because she is the reason why Nilfgaard is coming after them. She's the whole reason why they were attacked. And you get a little bit of a sense why when she lashes out and screams and literally shakes the room. And everybody in the room notices what went down. Right before she does leave the castle, though, Cirilla's grandmother tells her to find Geralt of Riva. He is her destiny. The girl is able to escape the city, but when she turns around and sees the city on fire, she once again belts out that powerful scream that ends up bringing down an entire wall. And of course, that ear-piercing, rattling scream is what makes Cirilla special. In episode 2 of The Witcher, Princess Cirilla, or Ciri as she goes by, has escaped into the woods and is just trying to survive. She comes across a boy who lets her know that what she's about to eat is poisonous. Now, he doesn't speak. He just kind of uses his hands. So she ends up linking up with him and following him around. And while she doesn't want to eat rat, she doesn't really have a choice. So the two end up sharing a nice rat together. And she's asking him all these questions, but he's not saying a word. In fact, she doesn't even know if he understands her. She tells him how she's kind of on the run. Instead of going towards the person that she's supposed to be going towards, she's running from somebody. And this somebody has a bird on their head. And the scariest part for her is that she doesn't know why this person wants her so badly. They start walking through the woods. She sees a Cintran flag and gets really excited and starts running towards it, but she notices when she turns back that the boy is gone. And these are all the people that were able to escape Cintra, and they form kind of a refugee camp in the woods. And she's never seen anything like it. She walks up to the food line thinking that she can just butt the line, but she's quickly told, no, that's not allowed. She does end up running into a boy, though, that recognizes the cloak that she's wearing because his father made it. His father made all of the clothes for her, although the boy doesn't recognize her, Princess Ciri. This kid is walking around with a necklace of ears like he's Daryl from The Walking Dead in Season 2. But unlike Daryl, they're not zombie ears, they're elf ears. And he does this to avenge all of the human lives lost in Philandrel's uprising. Last year, Philandrel the Elf King tried to claim some Cintran land. The humans fought back, including this kid's brother. Now, this is all news to Ciri, and it seems like it was a pretty big story that was simply kept from her. She's never even heard of Philandrel the Elf King. I mean, come on. Who hasn't heard of that guy? He then invites her to meet his family where they just lost her father, the same guy who made the cloak. And he died when the kingdom was attacked by Nilfgaard. And because of that, the mother doesn't exactly have any kind words for the royal family. I mean, she's just ripping apart Ciri's entire bloodline. And because of that, when they ask her name, she gives a fake name. The mom then notices that her shoes are pretty shabby and offers to get her a fresh pair. But instead of pulling something out of her closet, she orders her servant, who's a little person, to take off his shoes and give them to Ciri. That night as Ciri is trying to sleep, the woman sees that Ciri is having trouble and tries to calm her nerves. She asks about her parents, and Ciri says how they both died when they were young and she was raised by her grandparents, who just recently died in the Nilfgaard attack. The mother apologizes for her loss, and she says, no, I'm sorry. I mean, your family lost something too. The mother then says, don't worry, we'll get through this together, and it seems like that helps, and everybody goes to sleep. Until the camp is attacked. And when the camp is attacked, the mother can't find her one son and is ordering her servant to quickly pack up things, and she's just hurling insults at him. And it gets to the point where this guy says, you know what, fuck this. He grabs a knife and just starts repeatedly stabbing her. Ciri, who is watching this all go down, is shocked and kind of frozen still until somebody cuts the tent open and grabs her. And the person who cut her open was the boy from the woods who wouldn't talk to her. And he's come all the way back to save her. And it's a good thing, too, because that guy with the bird on his head, well, it's actually just a helmet with a feather, but he's in the camp looking for her. Both Ciri and the boy then head off into the woods, and they're taking a break, grabbing a drink. And when they're doing so, he takes off his hat, and it reveals that he has elf ears. And she makes mention of it, and this is a complete accident on his part, because elves aren't exactly popular. But instead of attacking him like it seems like most humans would do, she just says thank you. And he then introduces himself as Dara, because he understood her the entire time. And then the two head off together. Now, Geralt of Rivia has found another tavern to drink in, where, lucky for him, it's open mic night, and there's this bard here who is just belting his heart out. The problem is, the people there don't really want it. They start booing him relentlessly, and he notices that the only person that didn't have something to say about his set was Geralt. So he walks over to try to get some criticism, but Geralt isn't going to give it. And then he notices, wait, you're the Witcher, Geralt of Rivia. And when he says that loudly in the bar, somebody stands up and says, wait, Witcher, I have a job for you. There's some devil in our land who is stealing our food, and we really want you to take him out. The guy offers him 100, Geralt talks him up to 150, and they agree. So Geralt heads off, and the bard decides to follow him, because one of the criticisms that people seem to have about him is that his songs lack actual adventure. And what's more adventurous than linking up with a Witcher? The issue is, the Witcher doesn't really want this guy around. And he says, come on, you have a bad reputation. I could fix that. I could just travel around telling the tales of Geralt of Rivia, the butcher of Blaviken. And when he says that, the Witcher ends up punching him. But it doesn't deter the bar, he keeps following him. When they get to the area where this quote-unquote devil is located, Geralt tells the guy that there are no such thing as devils. And then all of a sudden the guy gets knocked out with a stone. Geralt ends up seeing what the person in the bar was talking about, and it is a frightening thing, but it's an intelligent creature. It can speak the language. It's just really deformed looking. I mean, Geralt makes mention that a human woman must have fucked a goat, probably not far off. But because it's an intelligent creature, Geralt says, I'm not going to kill you, just leave. Get out of here. But then all of a sudden, Geralt is knocked out. And when he wakes up, he's in a cave, tied up with the bard, and getting insulted left and right by an elf. But Geralt gets sick of the insults and headbutts her. But the elf who got headbutted is a servant of Filavandrel the Elf King, and he shows up. Now, the story that's commonly known is that the elves simply went up to the mountains and are living in palaces. And those palaces are actually the cave that Geralt is currently in. The real story is they were forced there by the humans. And Goat Boy / Devil Thing, actually his technical name is a Sylvan, was going down and stealing food for them. So Filavandrel is in a predicament because if he lets them go, he's expecting them to act like humans. Go down and let them know that the elves are actually having somebody steal our food for them, and thus starting a war. Or he kills them, and he doesn't really want to do that because he's already dug too many graves. The Witcher pleads his case, including the fact that there's really only one human here, and that's the bard. But the big message is that nobody needs to die. And the Sylvan steps in and says, no, the Witcher's different. He could have killed me, and he didn't. I think the Witcher's like us. Now, the elf who got headbutted is pleading with Filavandrel to kill the Witcher. And the Witcher says, if you kill me, go ahead. I'm right here. I'm ready to go. And this tactic works because they let them both go. And the bard is amazed by this. He thought that they were dead for sure. He continues to follow around the Witcher even after the Witcher says, no, it's time that we go our separate ways. But the bard is dead set on making songs for the Witcher, even if they're not actually true in nature. And I'll say it, the songs aren't that bad. And then finally we get to a small town where a teenage couple goes to make out, and the boy gives the girl a daisy, although she just throws it to the ground. But then she notices that the daisy is gone, and when they go to investigate it, they see that a deformed hunchback has gotten the flower. Now the girl tries to give the flower back to the couple, but instead of taking the flower, they decide to bully her and make fun of her. And she's got her eyes closed and are just trying to pray this thing away. And then all of a sudden, she portals to another location. And she had portaled to a place called the Tower of the Gull, where there's a guy there wondering who the hell she is. And she's trying to figure out how she got there. And he says, well, you must have portaled here. And he realized that she had no idea that she had magical powers. So he says, if you can conjure a portal out of thin air like that, having no idea that you had magical powers, then she's going to be coming for you. So he creates a portal that's hard to trace so that this mysterious woman doesn't come for this girl that had no idea 3 minutes ago that she even had powers, or what a portal was. Either way, the girl portals back to where she came from, and she's doing some chores, but that woman shows up in the town. And the woman's name is Tissaia de Vries, and she asks her father how much for a pig, and he says 10 marks. And then she says, how much for the girl? And he says 6 marks. But both Tissaia and her father agree to sell the girl for 4 marks. And the mother cannot believe that the dad just sold her own daughter, but he says she's no daughter of mine. The girl, who you'll learn later in the episode is named Yennefer, says that she's not going to go, but she doesn't have a choice. She ends up getting locked up. And when she does get locked up, she ends up smashing a mirror and trying to commit suicide, but she can't even do that right. So Tissaia ends up waking her up and introduces herself as Tissaia de Vries, the Rectoress of Aretuza. What a nickname. And Yennefer says, you should have let me die. And she says, no, that's not taking control. That's losing control. She then instructs her to meet her in the green room. But when Yennefer gets there, she's not the only girl. There's about 6 or 7 of them. And they're all dressed similarly. And Yennefer is the last one to show up. Tissaia tells them that chaos is the most dangerous thing in this world. And it's all around us. All the time. But each one of those girls showed an aptitude of channeling that. And when they did that, it reached her in Aretuza. The one girl saved a drowning boy with her mind. The other girl made her mom fat. Another one froze a cat, even by accident. But just because they're conduits of chaos doesn't mean you're capable of magic. At one point, one of the girls says she wants to go home, and Tissaia says, this is your home. And if you listen closely, you'll survive. So the first lesson is balance and control. And each of them has a rock and a flower. And in between is the balance. She instructs all of them to use their mind to raise the stone and gives them a spell to do so. But the first girl who is able to successfully raise the stone is overjoyed at first until she realizes her arm is going black and dying. And as the girl is screaming, Tissaia says, this is the balance. There's no conjuring something from nothing. There's always going to be a give and a take. And then she picks up the flower, raises the stone with her mind, and then the flower dies. And that shows the give and the take. And all of the girls seem to be having success except for Yennefer. She's getting more and more frustrated until finally she just runs out. She does realize, though, that she is near the tower that she portaled to. So she heads there and meets the guy who portaled her back and gives a formal introduction. And his name is Istredd. Now, maybe a week or two go by, and the next task is to stare into a partner's eye and figure out what their biggest fear is. And as she's doing so, her partner is encouraging her that she can do it, and she's the first one to complete the task. She says her biggest fear is snakes. So Tissaia says, come over here. You struggle with all physical activities, and now you have the audacity to lie to me? Your worst fear makes so much sense. Even if you were a beauty, nobody would love you. And insults like that are pushing Yennefer to the tower to confide in Istredd. But Istredd is encouraging her to not give up and keep pushing forward. He tells her to read his mind, and it works. A couple more weeks go by, and the next exercise is to head to that Tower of the Gull during a lightning storm and try to catch lightning in a bottle. Tissaia makes mention that this tower is for the Brotherhood of Sorcery, and nobody's supposed to be allowed in there. Of course, Yennefer's been going there for a while. So each girl is given a bottle to try to catch a lightning bolt. And the first girl gets up there and gets struck by lightning. The second girl gets up there and is able to catch lightning in a bottle until the bottle explodes in her face. And now it's Yennefer's turn. And Yennefer gets struck by lightning as well. And when she gets struck, Tissaia insults Yennefer again. And it's one too many insults. Because Yennefer didn't catch lightning in a bottle, but she did catch a lightning bolt. And out of sheer anger, she throws that lightning bolt back at Tissaia de Vries, and Tissaia is able to catch it and dispose of it. After everybody's done with the exercise, Tissaia pulls Yennefer to the side and tells her that she needs to control her emotions. I mean, what would happen if she sent her to advise a king and she got her feelings hurt? Probably cost the king his life and people their lives. And Yennefer seems to understand all of this completely. She then goes and has a talk with Istredd and says, I'm pretty sure she knows, and I'm going to be sent home, and we're never going to see each other again. And what she really wants is for him to teach her how to make that untraceable portal so that she can see him again. But he says, I can't do that. I can't risk the Brotherhood of Sorcery finding out that I taught you that. It's just against the rules. He then points out all the skulls that are in the tower and says, do you know what these are? And she says, yeah, they're skulls. He says, no, they're elf skulls. Because elves built Aretuza. And not as slaves. They built it way before humans were here. Elves were the original sorcerers of the continent. But after humans and monsters arrived at the conjunction of the spheres, elven mages taught the humans how to use magic. And how did the humans repay them? By slaughtering all of them. And now they pretend that the power always belonged to them. And this comes as a huge surprise to her. He's telling her all of this because instead of acting like these stories don't exist, he wants to honor the elves. He then pulls out the flower that he used to conjure that untraceable portal and tells her that this flower only grows from where elder elf blood has been spilled. She then eats a little bit of that flower and they speak in elvish tongue, and to his surprise, a portal appears. And he can't believe that she was able to conjure a portal on her first try. She seems a little bit embarrassed and tries to get out of there, but he says, no, wait. And she admits that her real father was half elf, and her father died in something called the Great Cleansing, where thousands of elves were murdered by humans. And because her father is half elf, that's why her spine is all messed up. It's also why she's only worth 4 marks, and it's also why no one could ever love her. He then ends up kissing her, and it's the first time she's ever really been touched by a man before, and she is thrilled about it. I mean, it actually brings tears to her eyes. But she then takes that flower that he gave her and brings it to Tissaia. She asks, what are you going to do with it? And she says, nothing. I just wanted to make sure you could get it from him. She even calls her Yennefer for the first time, and before this, she had simply referred to her as Piglet, whereas all the other girls were referred by their own name. So this is a good sign for Yennefer. And probably because of it, she asks, does this mean I get to ascend now? Because I am ready. And Tissaia says, go back to your room and listen for the knock. Now, while Yennefer was meeting with Tissaia, Istrid was also having a meeting of his own with Stregobor. Stregobor says, you've been working on her for months. You've got to give me something. Make Bannard proud. And he says, well, she's part elf. And that's something. But that night, Yennefer is waiting in her room to get that knock. And she hears footsteps and gets really excited, but then the footsteps wane. And she hears a knock at somebody else's door and the instructions for that person to follow Tissaia. So Yennefer says, screw this, grabs the flower and portals to the location and sees that Tissaia is going through a ceremony with 3 other girls. But then Yennefer realizes maybe it's a good thing she wasn't invited to the ceremony because Tissaia turns all of the girls into eels. And after she does so, Tissaia says, you can come down now, Yennefer. Yennefer is kind of disgusted because those were her former friends. And Tissaia says she took away their control, but they still have the power. And that's when Yennefer realized that these girls were a conduit for Aretuza. Tissaia then repeats that sometimes the best thing a flower can do for us is die. So Yennefer grabs a broom and starts pushing the eels into the water, and the water turns from black to a nice shiny white. And Yennefer realizes the power. Now in episode 3, Geralt was able to get rid of the Bard, and the Bard did his job. He's going around spreading the legend of Geralt of Rivia. And it has reached all the way to a bar/brothel where after Geralt sleeps with one of the girls, he finds out that he's kind of a legend, and it's all because of the barb. But during pillow talk, she makes mention how he's not the first Witcher there. There was a Witcher a couple weeks back because a kingdom close by called Temeria has been dealing with some kind of monster, and the Witcher showed up, took their money, and apparently ran. So he has the horse stay with the barkeep and then heads off to Temeria to see if he can be of service. But when he gets there, the townspeople are having a little meeting, and they're trying to figure out what to do. And one of them mentions how Nilfgaard overthrew their king, so why don't we just do that? He's clearly not getting the job done. And Geralt, who is over in the corner, finally pipes up and says, oh, that's genius. So you can't kill this monster, so you're going to kill the king? I mean, how can that not work? And they don't really want to hear from the Witcher because his kind just stole all their money and ran off. But he tells them that, unlike that guy, he takes payment after the job is done, and he does it for about a third of the price. Either way, they don't really get into negotiating because the king's men show up to break up the uprising. And one of the guys is the king's confidant, Ostrit. He tells them, if you guys just disperse, I'm not going to tell the king about this, just go your separate ways. The interaction does get pretty heated, but all the townspeople do end up leaving. Afterwards, Ostrid tells Geralt, I'm going to have my king's men escort you out of town. We don't want to see your kind here. But as he's being escorted out of town, all of a sudden, the king's men just collapse off their horses, and a sorceress appears out of the woods. And Geralt says, oh, this is genius. So the king is going to make a big public spectacle about kicking me out of town, but then he's going to have you pay me to take care of the monster. And she says, no, actually, this isn't his idea. It's my idea, and I'm going to pay you with my coin. But I don't want you to kill the monster. I want you to keep the monster alive. She walks him back into the city and explains how 6 years ago, stable hands just started vanishing from the castle above the city. Not long after, stable hands turned into citizens of Temeria, and not long after that, King Foltest's men realized that something was coming from the crypt. Some kind of beast. And that's where the king's sister Ada was buried. And there's always been a rumor that she had an affair with somebody in town. And when Geralt hears that, he asks, was she pregnant? Because there's always this myth about a woman who dies when she's pregnant, a werewolf, and all this bad shit happens. And the sorceress, who's named Marigold, by the way, says, I don't know, but if she was, that would be the heir to the throne because King Foltest never married and never had kids. The king then fled the castle, and after Nilfgaard had their king overthrown, the Brotherhood couldn't risk having the same thing happen to Temeria, so they sent Marigold there about 3 months ago to figure out what's going on. And she wants to cure the creature, but Geralt, who thinks it's something called a Vukalat, says Vukalats can't be cured. And she says, yeah, that's the thing though, it's not a Vukalat. She then takes him down to the morgue where they're storing the bodies of all those who died at this creature's hand, and she wants him to guess what kind of creature this could possibly be. But one of those dead bodies is the Witcher. And when Geralt sees the body, he's so insulted that they ran with this story that the Witcher just took their money and ran instead of just admitting that the Witcher was killed, because it makes his kind look bad. After voicing that displeasure, he starts rummaging around the insides of the Witcher and finds out that the liver and the heart are missing. And there's only one kind of beast that is that picky of an eater, and it's something called a striga. And strigas are female, which means that not only was Ada pregnant, she was pregnant with a baby girl. So Marigold takes Geralt to the king, where He's explaining the whole striga thing and what could have possibly happened, and a few of the king's men are getting up in arms about this because he's dare not referring to this creature as the princess, because technically it is the princess, even though they just all found out about that. But when Geralt brings up the possible father / Ada having an affair, King Foltest says everybody out. So everybody gets up to leave, but Geralt's the last one, and he locks everybody out of the room and then goes back to talk to Foltest. And he wants to know who the dad is, because he's pretty certain that Foltest knows. Foltest never batted an eye when Geralt brought up his sister being cursed, his sister being murdered. The only time he got a reaction out of him was when he brought up the father. It also doesn't look good for Foltest the fact that he never married, he never had any kids. The whole time Geralt is implying that Foltest is the father. It doesn't take long for Foltest's men to break down the door and get in, but Foltest has them stand down and says, "How dare you accuse me of sleeping with my own sister? Get out of this town and never come back." But he doesn't really leave town. He's perched outside of the abandoned castle trying to figure out a way in, and Marigold shows up and is willing to help out because she knows that the best chance to cure this striga is Geralt. So they create a diversion to get rid of the guards, and then they enter the castle. And Marigold is just speaking aloud saying, "Jesus, what happened to Ada and Foltest?" And that's when Geralt says, "I think Foltest is the father." She asks, "Do you think it's possible that Foltest had cursed his sister?" He says, maybe. They make their way into her bedroom and they start snooping around, investigating certain things. And Marigold finds a bunch of letters that were sent from their mother to Foltest and Ada, denouncing their relationship, proving that the two were having an affair. So with this evidence, they bring it to the family advisor, Ostrit. And in the letters, it clearly states that their mother was against the affair, and Ada had repeatedly said that she wasn't willing to end it. Now, the mother wasn't involved in any kind of sorcery, so you can cross her off the list of people who could have cursed Ada. Geralt then asks Ostrit what his relationship to Ada was, and he says, kind of a confidant, a protector, if you will. He says, all right, well, if you were a confidant, did she ever mention anything about her brother? And he says, not like this. Marigold pipes in and says she was ashamed, and Ostrit says, or she was frightened. I mean, what if this relationship wasn't totally consensual? Geralt says, so you think that he raped her, got her pregnant, and then cursed her to cover it up? Ostrit says, well, kings have done more than that for less. He says, that is true, but there's one problem with that theory. And Geralt gets really close to him and says, I smelled the sheets in the bedroom. I know what you did. Now, at first, Ostrit denies any wrongdoing whatsoever, but eventually he comes clean that he had cursed Ada because he was so jealous that Foltest had got her. And he was pissed off at Foltest for turning Ada against him. He was in love with Ada, so he wanted to punish Foltest. And they tell him, well, you have to tell us how to get rid of the curse. And he's not willing to do that because he wants the striga to continue to kill people so that it turns the entire town against King Foltest. And he can't even see how much damage he has done by killing the woman he loved, by ruining her unborn child, and by killing innocent townsfolk. Later on that night, Geralt encounters a bunch of the king's men, and he thinks he's going to have to throw down, but the king appears and says, Marigold told me I can trust you. He then asks his plan and says, do you think you can still save my daughter? And this is the first time he's admitting that, yes, he was the father. Geralt says, well, this isn't the first time I've gone up against a princess that many think is a beast. And King Foltest thinks, this is great. What happened to her? Well, yeah, she died. But Geralt reassures him that he will try to keep the princess alive at all costs. He then heads into the abandoned castle where he has Ostrit chained up, beaten up, because he's trying to figure out how to lift this curse. And Ostrit is playing hardball at first, but succumbs to the pressure and says, look, man, I don't know. There was someone who was in bad standing with the Brotherhood. They showed up on a full moon. They told me to sacrifice a goat, bathe in their own blood, wait for a rooster, and just say a spell. He says, all right, well, what was the spell? And Ostrit tells him it was something in elf tongue. And when Geralt hears that, he's pissed because he just realized that he's going to have to fight this thing until dawn. And fighting and keeping both of them alive until dawn is going to be really difficult to do. So he takes a medieval 5-hour energy that gives him a certain power. He goes down and starts fighting the striga, and he's putting up a really good fight until he goes to take another one of those 5-hour energies and realizes that the bottle broke. And he's quickly running out of his power. He's been able to trap the striga indoors, but Striga's doing a number on him. Luckily for Geralt, dawn does arrive and the striga goes to run into the crypt where it lives during the day, but Geralt is able to bump it off and lock himself in the crypt, keeping the striga out, having to deal with the sunlight. And that lifts the curse. When Geralt comes out, he sees the girl all covered in blood and goes to console her, but she stabs him in the jugular, he bites her, and Geralt is in really, really rough shape. Luckily for him, though, Marigold has found him and patched him up, but all Geralt is concerned about is getting back to his horse. Now, it's worth mentioning that the princess is also healing up as well, and he does ask how she's doing. Marigold then asks, who's Renfri? That was the only name that you were saying in your sleep, but Geralt is unwilling to tell her anything about Renfri. He just wants to get his payment. And in his bag of money, he has the brooch that looks a lot like Renfri's brooch. Marigold then mentions, I feel like there's more to your life than monsters and money. I can just sense it. And she might be referring to Ciri, who is woken up in the woods and compelled to walk forward by this voice that's calling to her. Now, Dara wakes up shortly after that and realizes what's happening and goes to chase after her, but then all of a sudden an arrow shoots out at him. And he looks around and there are a bunch of skeletons all filled up with arrows. So he's in a dangerous predicament, but he continues to run forward, and it doesn't take long for him to get hit by one of those arrows. So he gets really close to her, but isn't able to actually reach her, and Ciri continues to walk forward into this forest. Now, Yennefer has completed her training and is continuing her relationship with Istrid. The two are steady fucking. And with her power, she's even doing it in front of a crowd of elves. Albeit, they're fake. But the two seem to be in a really good spot, and they're both talking about their future assignments of where they're headed, and how eventually one day they want to be together and how that they can make that happen. She then goes to meet with the medieval plastic surgeon, and just like a plastic surgeon, he is talking up his abilities. He can make the ugliest people beautiful, no matter how tough the clay. And this is all in preparation for the party that they're going to have after their graduation ceremony, where they meet the kings of the kingdoms that they're going to be assigned to. And she's got all these dresses around her, and she's really excited until she looks in the mirror. Tissaia then comes in and realizes that even with all these dresses, when Yennefer looks in the mirror, she lacks any self-confidence, so she tries to give her a pep talk. She tells her to just leave that girl in the mirror. Tissaia then goes to meet with the Brotherhood of Sorcery, and they're discussing where they're sending all of these girls, one of whom is the niece of the head of the council. And Yennefer is supposed to go to a city called Adoran, and it's a really good fit for her. But Stregobor thinks that she'd be better suited at Nilfgaard. And he goes so low to mention how she has elven blood, and Adoran and elves do not get along. So if Adoran found out that she was quarter elf, wouldn't end well. And there's not much Tissaia can even do about it. I mean, the cat's out of the bag. So the council votes that she will be heading to Nilfgaard and not Adoran. Of course, when Yennefer finds out about this, she's pissed. She storms into Tissaia's office and demands to meet with the council. Tissaia's like, you're not meeting with the council. I do that. I'm the one who chose this. Yennefer says, no, I don't think so. I think what happened was the council overruled you. And that's when Tissaia comes clean that it has to do with the fact she's quarter elf. And Yennefer feels betrayed that she revealed that to the council. She says, I didn't reveal that to the council. And at that moment, Yennefer knows exactly who's been talking about her, and it's been Istrid. So she goes and breaks up with him. The two accuse each other of spying on each other for their sorcerers. Yennefer tells him that the plans that he thinks he was having were all put there by her. God, you just hate to see love break up. But Yennefer is pissed. She's also sick of looking like the way she is. So she skips her graduation and walks into the plastic surgeon and says, all right, time to fix me. But the problem is she was supposed to be fixed by graduation. So he says, no, I can't do that. The council will have my head. She says, well, do they have your cock as well? And no guy can take that insult. So he says, all right, fine, I'll do it. He wants to put her under, but she says, no time. I'll do it while I'm awake. He tries to talk her out of that because it's a painful process, but she insists. And it is a very painful process, but he is able to make her beautiful. And when she walks into that party, it is a bad bitch alert. I mean, that spine is looking fine. Everybody in the party stops and looks at her, including Princess Ada and Prince Foltris as kids. And this is the first time we're learning that these storylines are not playing out at the same time. She then walks over to the Prince of Aedirn, who is infatuated with her because she is gorgeous, and he wasn't really feeling the girl that was assigned to him in the first place, and it seems like Yennefer has gotten her way. She's not heading to Nilfgaard after all, at the behest of the king, and she will be heading to the city she wanted to the entire time. And the Brotherhood can only stand back and watch it go down, pissed off because they just got outsmarted. In episode 4, we're going to fast forward 30 years into Yennefer's timeline, where the allure of being a mage has completely worn off. She's escorting a queen and her newborn baby daughter back to their castle, and the queen is complaining about the king and how she's really just used to be a vessel and nothing more, and how she's kind of envious of Yennefer and her freedom. But then out of nowhere, their caravan is attacked. When Yennefer gets out to investigate, she sees an assassin along with this spider-like beast who has taken out all of the king's men. Yennefer quickly portals to another location, but the assassin follows her. So they keep playing this cat and mouse game where Yennefer will portal to one place and the guy follows her. The whole time Yennefer is trying to figure out how he's tracking her. There must be something that the king gave the queen, because Yennefer lets the queen know that the king sent this assassin to take her out. But as they keep portaling and portaling, the guy keeps following her. Eventually it looks like Yennefer just leaves and it's just the queen and the assassin, and the queen says, take my baby as a sacrifice, but leave me, and tell the king that I can get him an heir to the throne. But the assassin slits her throat, and then sends the tarantula-like beast onto the baby. But that's when Yennefer uses her magic, because she didn't actually leave, to kill the beast. She then grabs the baby and tries to portal to another location, but the assassin sends a dagger, and when Yennefer arrives at the new location, which is on a beach, she finds out that the dagger not only pierced her, but also killed the child. So Yennefer is sitting down on the beach and talking to this dead child about how she's not really missing much, not getting the chance to live her life. And if there's one thing that her mom was right about, it's the fact that they are just used as vessels because she's a female. She then buries the child. And then there's Geralt, who has shown up in yet another town to kill another beast. And one of the townspeople is in the tavern telling the tale of Geralt of Rivia, saying how it looks like he's dead. He's swallowed by this huge monstrous thing that they hired him to kill. And another person that's there is the bard, Jasker. And he's writing all this information down for more songs because him singing about the Witcher has done wonders for his career. But he also doesn't believe that the Witcher is dead. And sure enough, Geralt walks in the tavern covered in blood looking for his payment. Jasker then pulls Geralt aside and says, I've made you pretty famous. Normally I would charge anywhere from like 5 to 10%, but instead I just need a little tiny favor. He's going to this wedding ceremony and he needs protections because he slept with a lot of their wives and he wants to make it out of there alive. So the two shower up and head on off to the ceremony where princes will make their case for why they should marry the queen's daughter. And this is another example of the timelines aren't matched up because the queen is Queen Calante and her daughter is Ciri's mother. Now the bard doesn't want to cause any unwanted attention to his bodyguard that night, so he has him dressed like a normal person. But as soon as Geralt enters the room, he gets recognized by Musak, who was the sorcerer in Cintra the night that Nilfgaard attacked. But when we meet him, he's not working for the queen yet. He's just there to see the whole thing go down. And Musak and Geralt have a history. They know each other from way back in the day. He takes Geralt aside and fills him in on all the details of what's going on, who's the favorite to marry Princess Pavetta, and how they're probably not getting out of there before dawn. Now, the favorite is the nephew of Cersei's grandfather, Iced. And Iced is very good with a sword, but he's been rejected by Queen Calante 3 times for a marriage proposal after her original husband died. The Witcher then needs to cut the conversation short because the bard has gotten into some hot water with another king who recognizes him from leaving his wife's chambers. So the Witcher shows up and says, I know he's got a recognizable face, but it's not him because he's a eunuch. And while Jasker doesn't really appreciate that narrative, it works, and, he's healthy. Calante then shows up in a suit of armor covered in blood. She walks over to her daughter Pavetta, but Pavetta is pissed off. She doesn't want to go through this ceremony. And Calante says, do you think I really want to marry your father? Look, after you get married, you can sleep with whoever you want. That's the way this works. So they start singing and dancing, and at one point during the night, 2 of the guys start arguing over killing a manticore, and neither of them believe that the other has done it. So while this pissing contest is going on, somebody alerts Queen Calante to the fact that there's a Witcher in the room, and she says, Witcher, can you settle this debate? Which one of them is right? And he says, well, neither of them. One of them insults the Witcher by saying, well, what does he know? He's just the butcher of Blaviken. And the bard knows that he can't stand that insult, but instead of losing his cool, the Witcher says, maybe they came across a different species of manticore. Calante then cracks up and says, well, why don't you tell us about the time that you killed all of those elves? Because according to the bard's song, that's what happened, even though in reality it didn't, and Geralt comes clean saying, no, the real story is I got my ass kicked. Calante says, any man who is willing to paint himself in the shadow of failure will make for more entertainment than anyone else in here. And then she invites the Witcher to come sit next to her. Calante asks him what he's doing there, and he tells her the situation with the bard. She then mentions how she will also want his services if blood ends up getting spilled that night, but he says, I'm not for sale, I'm not a bodyguard. I'm just helping that idiot out. And she likes the fact that he's standing up to her. She says, I could just order you to do it. And he says, you could if I was one of your servants, but I'm not. Their conversation is cut short when the princes start making their pitches, and the first one to go is Nilfgaard. But they just keep getting mocked and made fun of. And the worst of it comes from Queen Calante, who basically says that Nilfgaard is a shit stain on the continent. So more people start making their claims, but the conversation between Calante and Geralt continues. She wants to know why there are so few Witchers around anymore. And it's because it's no longer possible for them to create more of them, ever since the death of a guy named Cara Morhan. He then asks her, why do you risk your life on the battlefield when you can just sit in a tower and let other people die? And she says, well, there's something nice about killing monsters, is there not? And the conversation is turning a little flirtatious when she says, don't you think we make quite a team? But then all of a sudden somebody bursts on into the door that wasn't invited. And they're dressed in a suit of armor and apologize for the intrusion, but he wants to make his case for why he should get Pavetta's hand in marriage. And the big issue with him is he's not real royalty. He's a lord who's named Lord Urcheon of Erlenwald, but he doesn't really actually have any royal claim. And the fact that he doesn't have any claim is insulting to Calante. Another thing that's insulting is the fact that he's still wearing his helmet. He says, well, I can't take it off. I promised an oath that I wouldn't take it off until the sounding of the 12th bell. But Iced, Cersei's future grandfather, doesn't really buy that, so he comes over and knocks the helmet off to reveal that this guy is half human, half hedgehog. And as soon as everybody sees that, they're taken aback, and Calante orders the Witcher to kill him. But he says, no, I'm not killing him. He's not a monster, he's cursed. So Calante orders everybody else to kill him. And after killing 2 soldiers He says, I've come to claim what's rightfully mine. Pavetta, by the law of surprise, is mine. Because he saved Pavetta's father one time and was promised the law of surprise. Even after the claim, soldiers keep coming to try to kill him. And it doesn't take long for him to be surrounded, and it looks like he's going to be killed until Geralt comes over and saves him. The two team up and start taking people out, and Iced also joins them because he respects the law of surprise. So it's 3 versus a ton, but the 3 are winning. And that becomes obvious to Kalante, so she orders everybody to stop. Urchion, or Dooney as he's nicknamed, goes over and says the Witcher's right, I was cursed as a child. And really, his whole life had sucked until the day he saved the king. And when that happened, he chose as payment the law of surprise. And when he found out that the king was going to have a child, he knew that that would be his one day. But he also knew that no woman would love him the way he looked. So he just hid, waiting for the 12th bell to ring so the curse would be lifted and then he could claim the law of surprise. Now, normally the law of surprise is not a child. It's like a plot of land, a newborn puppy, but in this case, it is a child. But by destiny, the two ended up meeting before he could even claim the law of surprise and falling in love. And now they both want to marry consensually. And Kalante is getting pressure from all over to honor the law of surprise, including from Iced, who says, a life was saved, a debt must be repaid. Geralt doesn't believe in destiny, but does believe in the law of surprise and honoring that tradition. So it looks like she's going to. She puts down her sword and goes over to bless him, but grabs a dagger and goes to stab Dooney. And when she does that, Pavetta screams out, and it's the same scream that we saw from Ciri back in episode 1, but way more powerful. It throws everybody back, and it's as if there's a hurricane going around, and Dooney and Pavetta are at the center of it, and they slowly start to rise in the air. It takes effort from both Geralt and Musak to use their powers to get them down. And this is the first time that Kalante has ever seen her daughter had this power. She knew about it from the family, but it skipped her. Kalante's mother had it, Kalante didn't have it, and until this moment, she didn't think that Pavetta had it. Kalante then makes the announcement that Destiny has spoken, and she is accepting the law of surprise. Iced, in a baller move, stands up next to her and says, and if anybody has a problem with that, you gotta go through me too, because Kalante has accepted my proposal for marriage. Kalante doesn't really put up a fight about it and just says, yeah, so there'll be 2 ceremonies tonight. So Kalante goes to the ceremony with Pavetta blessing both her and Dooney. And when she does so, Dooney turns back into a human. Because when she put her blessing on the relationship, it lifted the curse before the 12th bell. Geralt tries to leave, but Dooney says, no, I can't let you go. You saved my life. I need to give you something. Geralt doesn't want anything, but Dooney persists and he says, fine, I'll do what you did. The law of surprise. And Geralt doesn't really have any intention of coming back and picking this up. But when he said he wanted the law of surprise as payment, Pavetta ends up throwing up. Because by doing so, just like when Dooney did it, Destiny has spoken that he will one day claim Pavetta's child. And we, of course, know this to be Ciri. Musak then goes and asks Geralt to stay because it's obvious that Pavetta doesn't know how to harness her powers. He also wants him to stay because of the law of surprise. The issue with it is Geralt doesn't believe in destiny, and he has no plans on cashing in on the law of surprise. Musak says, whether you believe in it or not, the bond between you and this unborn child is going to be extraordinary. But if you leave and never claim this child of surprise, you're going to unleash true calamity upon all of us. And unfortunately for Musak, that is a risk that Geralt is willing to take. Now, the child, as I said, is Ciri, and she has made her way into those woods and quickly surrounded by a bunch of people that live in there. And these are magical woods. And they're all wanting to know how Ciri got in there. The problem is, she doesn't really remember. They've also grabbed Dara and saved his life. And he wants to know why they're calling her by this fake name, and it's because she reveals to Dara who she actually is, saying, I was told never to reveal who I actually am outside of the castle. When Dara hears who she actually is, he's disgusted because all of his people were slaughtered by her grandmother, Queen Kalante. But Ciri doesn't believe any of it, because that's not the Kalante that she grew up with knowing, even though it's all true. That night, Ciri does have a dream about all of the elves being slaughtered, but is woken up because the people in the woods have told both her and Dara about the water in the woods and how they have to drink it, because everybody that steps foot in the woods is instructed to drink this magical water. And the water has healing properties for those that are pure at heart. But if you have bad intentions entering the woods, you'll be killed off. Dara drinks it, and he's fine. And he's encouraging her to do the same, but when she does so, nothing happens. So they bring her to the source of the water and have her drink that. And when she does, she's immediately transported into a desert with one single tree. And the tree is asking her, what are you, child? Now, finally, there's the issue of the person who is chasing her from Nilfgaard. He, along with his men, headed back to Cintra and are looking for the body of Queen Kalante, which they discover. One of them ends up eating a piece of her body and then getting his guts ripped open, where the mage, who is the niece of the head of the Brotherhood of Sorcery, is able to discern where she is. She's in the woods. They also know it's not easy to get in there. In episode 5, Yennefer is realizing that she wants to have a baby, and that was taken from her when she went through that plastic surgery ceremony. She's been off the Brotherhood's grid for a while and is trying to go from town to town, mage to mage, looking for a cure, but none of it's really working. She goes to one guy who says, you don't even have enough money. But with your powers, I'm sure if you head into town and set up shop, you'll have the money in no time. So that's what she does. And she's helping people with various ailments until the mayor comes in looking to collect. He feels like if she's setting up shop in his town, he should get a cut. And she gets arrested. Or I should say, she agrees to get arrested. Now there's Geralt, who can't sleep. He's fishing and gets reunited with Jaskier the Bard. And it's been about 10 years since the last time they saw each other at Pavetta's wedding. And Geralt is on edge because he can't sleep, and it looks like he's fishing, but actually he's fishing for something called a djinn. And basically a djinn is just nothing more than a genie, right down to the 3 wishes angle. And he would, of course, use that wish to be able to sleep. But Jaskier says, let's think of this more logically here. Maybe you can't sleep because destiny won't let you. You haven't gone and cashed in your law of surprise yet, and you don't have any plans to. Maybe that's why you can't sleep. But Geralt refuses to follow destiny and instead just hurls an insult at Jaskier, saying that his singing is like ordering a pie with no filling. Shortly after that, though, he is able to wrangle in a djinn. And the djinn lives in this kind of ceramic bottle with a cap on it. When you release the cap, the djinn has to grant you 3 wishes. But Jaskier grabs the ceramic bottle and says, no, I'm not going to give it back to you until you take back what you said about me. And the two inadvertently open it up, and Jaskier immediately thinks that he's the one who has all the wishes, so he starts naming all of this stuff. Geralt yells at him, saying there's only 3 wishes. Jaskier says, well, how was I supposed to know you wanted them all to yourself? And he yells, I just wanted some damn peace. And at that moment, Jaskier starts coughing up a bunch of blood because the djinn has gone and attacked his throat. Geralt uses his powers to get the djinn away and then realizes that he has got to save the bard quickly. So he horses into a nearby encampment and asks for a doctor. But the doctor says, I'll be honest, I can help with the pain, but I can't cure him. You're going to need somebody more powerful than me. So Geralt says, well, there has to be a mage in town, right? But the doctor is reluctant to give the mage a glowing recommendation because the mage is Yennefer. Geralt says, what are you not telling me? And the doctor says, well, no, there is a mage in town. She's locked up in the mayor's home right now. But it's obvious he doesn't think it's a great idea for Geralt to head in. But Geralt needs to save Jaskier. So he rides over to find Yennefer. And Yennefer is in the middle of having a conversation with Tissaia of all people. And this is the first time they've seen each other in a long time. Tissaia mentions how she abandoned Adrian's court and how the king that she abandoned is dead and there's a new one in there. And how down in Nilfgaard, the niece of the head of the Brotherhood is thriving in her role, which should have been Yennefer's. After the rightful heir returned to Nilfgaard, she has helped restore peace, although we know that's not true. Yennefer gets sick of listening to this and says, what do you want? And Tissaia says, well, you were hidden for a while, but now you're making noise. The thing that you're looking for, it's not there. You're just wasting your time. And if you're not careful, you're going to end up just like those mages that you're seeking advice from. Irrelevant. You want a cure so badly, but it's making you sloppy. You're pure chaos right now. And this behavior isn't going to get tolerated by the Brotherhood. They're going to come after you. The two get into some bickering, and Tissaia says, why do you even want a baby? It's time to move on. Return to Artuza. But Yennefer has no plans on going back to Artuza. She wants to leave that in the past. Tissaia tries to talk some sense into her, offering her a chance at redemption. If she goes back to Artuza, everything that she's done in the past will be forgotten and forgiven. She'd also be able to help shape a new generation. But all Yennefer can focus on is the fact that Tissaia wants her help. And Tissaia says, only you could be thrown a lifeline and think that you are helping me. And Yennefer doesn't think that Tissaia actually wants her to do well. She thinks that she wants to help Yennefer so she can take the credit. It all has to go back to trust, and she doesn't trust Tissaia. Yennefer then tells her to leave because she has some business to attend to. And that business is throwing an orgy. I mean, an epic orgy. And after Geralt is able to get into the castle, he finds the mayor, who is under a spell, obviously, and then walks in on that orgy. And she quickly realized that he can't really be easily put under a spell because he's a witcher. And she's never met a witcher before, so she starts asking him questions about what it's like being a witcher, what powers they have. But he says, I'll explain all of that if you help my friend over there. He explains what happened with the djinn, and even pulls out the top of the bottle that the djinn was trapped in. And when Tissaia hears about the djinn and thinks about the 3 wishes, she sees opportunity. So she releases everybody in the orgy from her spell and lets them leave. And then she goes and cures the bard. Putting him under a healing spell, he is knocked out cold. As Jaskier sleeps, she implores the witcher to take a bath because he stinks so badly. And she ends up hopping into it, and they discuss their upbringing, what it was like for the two, being a witcher. But Geralt's big concern is the fact that he might have just promised indentured servitude to her, because he did say, I'll do whatever you want as long as you fix him. Although she's not interested in that. She says, your company and conversation is payment enough. So Geralt gets out of the tub and changes into some clothes that she got him. When he walks back in to go check on the bard, he is knocked out, but he also notices that she has drawn the emblem from the top of the djinn bottle on the ground. And he gets a really uneasy feeling, so he says, I'm going to take him now. And Yennefer says, you can't wake him up. He's got to wake up on his own, or else the healing won't take. And her whole plan is, after Jaskier wakes up, Jaskier's going to say his final wish. And then the djinn will be free, looking for another vessel. And she'll take over, becoming extremely powerful in the process. But before Geralt can really put up too much of a fight, Yennefer uses some herbs to create a spell that knocks him out. The next time he wakes up, he's in prison, along with the doctor from the encampment. The doctor lets him know that Yennefer used him as a revenge tool. He went from person to person wrecking havoc through the town because the town wants to get Yennefer out of that building. They want her gone. And because of this, the doctor showed up trying to cure him of the spell, but everybody just thought that they were working in cahoots, so they arrested both of them, and now they're up for trial looking at the death sentence. A soldier comes and starts mocking and ridiculing the Witcher, and the Witcher at one point just says, "I wish that you would burst," and sure enough, the guy bursts. And that's when the doctor says, "It appears that you're the one who has the wishes." And that was his second wish, the first being that he gets some peace, which resulted in the bard not being able to talk. So while Geralt was realizing that he was actually the one with the wishes, Jaskier woke up and was accosted by Yennefer to make his last wish. Although when he does it, nothing happens. She is trying to become that vessel, however, and has no more use for Jaskier, so she lets him go. And both Jaskier and Geralt link up outside of the castle. And Jaskier lets him know that there's some crazy witch in there who is trying to become the vessel of the Djinn, and at that moment, Geralt realizes that she's not going to be able to do that. It's going to kill her. So Geralt heads back in there to try to save her life, although she's extremely hard-headed and thinks that she's got a handle on this when she actually doesn't. Geralt then whispers a final wish, and it frees the Djinn and saves her life in the process, but when the Djinn leaves the house, the roof collapses on top of them. Yennefer was quick thinking, though, and portaled their way down to the living room. Although the doctor and the bard are outside, not realizing that, thinking that the bard's friend just died, and the doctor's crush just died, because he is smitten hard with Yennefer. Although, of course, they didn't die, and after some bickering about whose fault is who, the sexual tension is too much, and the two end up having sex. And as the bard is lamenting the loss of his friend, the doctor walks over and looks in the living room and sees that they're very much alive. After they're done, Yennefer asks, "What was your final wish?" But the Witcher isn't willing to tell. Now, back in the forest with Ciri, they have discovered who she actually is, and a lot of them aren't happy with the fact that she lied, and they aren't happy with the fact that she comes from that family. They also have an issue because some soldiers from Nilfgaard were caught outside of the forest. So the head of the group says, "We're going to let her stay, and also, she could be very useful against this army, because she is extremely powerful." But then, in the forest, in walks Musak. Or so we think. Because the guy from Nilfgaard that has been hunting Ciri with a feather on his helmet had to figure out a way to get into that forest. So he hired a doppelganger to take over Musak's body. And when he does that, he's able to know everything that Musak was thinking. So when Musak enters the forest, it is as if it is Musak. On the outside, everything he says, although with the wrong intentions. He was instructed clearly to bring her back alive. And he sweet-talks her to following him out of the forest, along with Dara, who Ciri implored to come with them. The whole time, she has no idea that that isn't actually the guy she knows. It's just a doppelganger that was sent there to pick her up. In episode 6, the Witcher has once again been hired by people to take out a monster, and Jaskier has accompanied him. But it's taking so long that they're starting to think he's dead, and they don't have to pay, so they're about to get out of there, even though Jaskier is imploring them to stay. Out of nowhere, this guy with two girls shows up and says, "You should probably listen to Bard." But when the person who hired Geralt tries to be Tommy Toughnuts with the guy, one of the girls ends up killing him. Right after his body hits the floor, a monster's head is thrown over the rocks by Geralt, who is looking for his payment. The man then introduces himself as a man named Borch, and his two companions are Taya and Vea. And he's been looking all over for Geralt of Rivia. So everybody heads to the bar, and he tells them that a green dragon was spotted near a town. And after the villagers started attacking it, the green dragon got pissed and attacked them back. So the king of the village has organized this dragon hunt. The king is promising to whoever kills the dragon treasure hoard, along with the title of lord among one of his many states. And he's coming to Geralt because he is one of the heads of the 4 teams that's going after the dragon. Problem is, Geralt doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to kill dragons. And he's pretty adamant about saying no. Even though Geralt is saying no, Borch continues on, trying to convince him to come along. He starts showing off some of the teams in the bar that they'll be competing against. One is a bunch of dwarves. The other is a group of reavers. And then the third team walks in. And a part of their group is Yennefer. Now, as soon as Yennefer walks in the bar, Jaskier says, "Yeah, no, we're out. Thank you. We're gonna leave now." But Geralt says, "I'm in." Before all the groups head off to the dragon hunt, Yennefer walks over to talk to Geralt, and her and Jaskier exchange some barbs. And then Geralt asks, "What are you even doing here?" And she's there to escort this knight who is the definition of a Gordy go-hard. Prime example is during the walk up the mountain to find the dragon's lair, Jaskier, who has been hitting on Taya and Vea the entire time, says, "Hey, I'm gonna go in this brush over here and find us some food." But when he does, he also finds a monster. Now, as soon as Geralt sees this beast, he knows that it poses no threat, it's just hungry, and if they feed it, it'll go away. But instead of heeding that advice, the knight pulls out a sword and chops it up to bits. Later on in the walk up the mountain, they see some of the area where the dragon burned, and Geralt can't make sense of it. I mean, why would a dragon just all of a sudden attack? And Borch says when your species is dying off, you tend to become more desperate. Everybody makes camp for the night, and the knight has taken in that monster and starts to eat it, even though everyone's telling him he really shouldn't. And he probably should have taken their advice because he ends up getting sick from it. And because of that, amongst many other things with this guy, he becomes the butt of everybody's joke. One of the dwarfs makes mention that someone should let him know that the land that he's going to inherit won't even be around in 10 years because Nilfgaard is attacking. The rightful heir has shown up and is burning through the south. And when Yennefer hears that, she cracks up because she doesn't think too highly of Frangilla the mage. The dwarf says he's seen it with his own eyes, and they're slowly making their way through towns. And many of the towns that they visit could be next, including Cintra. And Jaskier says there's no way they're going to go through Cintra. Queen Kalante won't let them have what's rightfully hers. The conversation then turns to dragons because Jaskier doesn't actually believe in them. And he wants Geralt to tell everybody that they're all wasting each other's time, but Geralt says, no, it's true. While they're not as common as they used to be, they do in fact exist. And the green one, like the one that we're chasing, is the most common, followed by the red one, and then the most rare is a black one. Borch says the most rare one is a gold one, but Geralt doesn't believe that that's even a thing. He's never seen one himself and thinks it's a myth. And if they did exist, it was because of a mutation. But either way, if it did exist, it died off. The next day, everybody wakes up to find that Yennefer's knight has been murdered while he was going to the bathroom of all places. And the dwarfs make mention that somebody in this group is not playing fair. And he knows it wasn't his group, and he doesn't think that it's Borch's, which leaves the Reavers. So he offers Borch a plan. The dwarves have been mining that mountain for years and know a shortcut that could cut off a day. He tells Borch that if he wants to follow him, they can get in front of the Reavers, and then after they get there, it's every man for himself. And that sounds like a great idea to Borch. But Geralt says, hey, I'll catch up ahead, and wants to go talk to Yennefer. He first asks Yennefer if she's the one who killed the knight, and she says no, it was the Reavers. But the real question he has is what she's actually doing there. And then he realizes it's because there's this rumor that goes around that a dragon heart can help with fertility issues. And he can't believe that she wants to become a mother because she would make a terrible mother. He tells her, our lifestyle isn't conducive to being a parent. It's one of the reasons I've never claimed my child surprise. I don't want to subject a child to this. And he instantly knows that he should not have said that. And this is the first time that she's hearing that he has a child surprise. And she can't believe that she's being lectured about wanting to become a mother when this guy is kind of a deadbeat dad. The conversation gets pretty awkward, and he finally says, hey, the dwarves have found a quicker way. Why don't you follow us? And she does. But that quicker way is a very narrow walkway on the side of a mountain that, stiff gust of wind, it could blow you over and you could be killed. And it's great for dwarves because, they're short, but regular human beings are going to have problems with it. Although they've already wasted enough time getting up there that they're not going to turn back. So as the group slowly makes their way on the narrow walkway, one of the planks breaks, and Borch, along with Taya and Vea, are just hanging on by a chain. And Geralt of Riva is hanging on to the other end of that chain, trying to get them back up, but it's pointless. Taya, Vea, and Borch are just bringing everybody down, and they know that, so they let go, sacrificing themselves for the betterment of the group. After the walkway, Jaskier can sense that Geralt is feeling guilty about what happened with Borch and Taya and Vea, and tries to cheer him up, saying, we can just leave all this behind. We can get out of here. But Geralt isn't going anywhere without Yennefer, because he is in love with her. And he goes into her tent that night, and the two admit that they have feelings for each other. It's really adorable. They're in that puppy dog phase where they can't live without each other. But when they wake up the next morning, Yennefer notices that the dwarfs are gone because it is every man for themselves, and she quickly heads to the top of the mountain and freezes them in their tracks. But when she gets to the dragon's lair, the dragon is already dead. And the two people that pop out of the lair are Taya and Vea, very much alive. Right behind Yennefer was Geralt, and he is shocked to see both Taya and Vea. And then out of the sky pops a golden dragon. And that golden dragon was Borch. Because just like The Witcher had predicted, if golden dragons do exist, it must be because of a mutation. Borch explains how he needed somebody like The Witcher who wouldn't harm dragons but protect them, and he needed to go on this mission to keep his enemies close. While the green dragon is dead, they couldn't risk moving the egg, because if you move the egg, the dragon inside dies. And because the species is dying off, he couldn't let that happen. The group then is interrupted by the Reavers. Taya, Vea, Geralt, and Yennefer go into battle against them defending the egg, and they're able to. Right after the group takes out the Reavers, Yennefer's spell on the dwarfs is lifted, and they show up, and they're pissed because they think that they're too late. But Borch, who is transformed back into a human being, offers them dragon teeth as proof that they were the ones who in fact killed the dragon, saying, hey, if you don't tell, I'm not going to tell. You can take credit. And if the king is unwilling to take the dragon teeth, just tell him that on his wedding night, a dead dragon is going to drop on his table. And the dwarfs, who are never one to look a gift horse in the mouth, excitedly take it, getting to take credit for the kill and not having to do any of the work. Geralt, Jaskier, Borch, and Yennefer then have a conversation about why Borch did what he did, and he says that the dragon egg is his last legacy. It's his last child he's ever going to have, and he needed to protect it at all costs. He then thanks Yennefer for her help, saying, I can see why Geralt didn't want to lose you, but Yennefer has no idea what he's talking about. And Geralt looks at her and says, the Djinn. But when he says that, she interprets it as he used his last wish to make her fall in love with him. and the feelings that she's having for Geralt aren't actual feelings, but instead a forced upon wish. Geralt denies all of this, saying that the feelings that she's having for him are completely justified, and the two have their first fight. It's pretty adorable. And Borch jumps in and says, I'm going to save you guys a lot of time. Yennefer, you're never getting your fertility back, ever. It's not going to happen. And Geralt, while you don't want to lose her, you end up losing her. And Yennefer, who is crying at this point, says, he already did, and she walks off. And it's tough getting dumped. So when Jaskier tries to cheer up Geralt snaps at him, saying that what he really wants is to be left alone from Jaskier and for Jaskier to go away. And this hurts Jaskier's feelings, and he just says, okay, and he dejectedly walks off. And then finally there's the issue of Ciri, who is walking out of the forest along with Dara and the doppelganger, and she's asking the doppelganger a bunch of questions, and he's answering them, but he's getting more and more frustrated. Dara pulls her aside and says, there's something off with this guy. I know you know him, but think about what the Queen in the Forest said. Ask the right questions, and we're not doing that now. So Ciri starts asking the right questions, and ends up tricking him into a lie where he reveals that they killed Musak, and it was all in an attempt to get her. He reveals his true identity, and Dara pulls out a knife and goes after him, and both Dara and Ciri are able to get him down. And Dara is questioning him, saying, why did you go after her? But Ciri says, it's because I'm special, kill him. And when Dara hears that, he's a little surprised, and it frees up enough room for the doppelganger to knock Dara out. Ciri then goes running into the woods, but she's quickly caught and tied up. The doppelganger then takes Ciri's appearance and purposely gets caught by the man with the feather on his helmet, whose actual name is Kahar. He tells the doppelganger, who looks like Ciri, that while he didn't want to meet like this, his whole goal has been to help her fulfill her destiny, and that the white flame has brought them together, because she is the key to everything. But then the doppelganger reveals his true identity, saying, you didn't tell us what she really was. The two end up getting into a fight where one of them gets stabbed, and we assume the doppelganger is able to escape out. Later on, in a room full of dead bodies, Kahar is getting treated for that stab wound by Frangilla, and she lets him know that while they haven't found the doppelganger or the girl yet, they will continue to search. She can also tell that he's feeling pretty down about himself, and she reminds him he rose up against the usurper, helped free his people. She says, I witnessed the white flame call on you. I witnessed it mold you. I witnessed it anoint you. And while Ciri is the key, you are the commissioner. So don't worry, we'll find her, and we'll spread your supremacy through the kingdom, whether they want it or not. Now, Ciri, who was tied up by the doppelganger in the woods, has been found by Dara. He unties her but lets her know that she's just like her grandmother. Death and problems follow her everywhere she goes, and because of that, he's done. And he ends up walking off, leaving her by herself, crying in the middle of the woods. In episode 7, after Yennefer left Geralt, she went to go find Istrid, who is on an archaeological dig thanks to the Nilfgaardians tearing up the land. But it benefited him because it brought up all this old stuff. He is surprised yet happy to see her, and the two go get a drink. They reminisce about the good old times, and eventually Yennefer says, you know, everything we talked about we can still do. I can become a mage, you can become an archaeologist, and we can run away together. But Istrid kind of reams her out for breaking his heart, saying what a tough time he had getting over her. And he's not willing to let it happen again, so it was good seeing you, but I'm out. And as Yennefer is sitting there dumbfounded, this random guy slides up next to her, and she's thinking that he's trying to capitalize on somebody's rebound, so she tells him to piss off. He introduces himself as Vilgefortz and says that they should probably get out of there because the Nilfgaardians are forcing mages into service to help with their expansion. And he doesn't have a letter of safe conduct, and he's pretty sure hers is fake. So before they get caught, they should probably leave and head back to Aretuza. Because while she is rash and unpredictable, that's what he needs. And that's also what Tissaia needs. And when she hears that, she is floored that Tissaia sent this dude to come find her. He can tell that that annoys her, and he says, she said that you were the best student that she ever taught, and that's enough to get her to go to Aretuza. But when she gets there, she questions why she's even there. And they brought her there because they're worried that Nilfgaard is going to attack Cintra. She doesn't really care about that, and she wants to talk to Tissaia, but he tells her that Tissaia doesn't even know she's there. And she goes, I've been here for 5 minutes, and the lies have already started. I'm out of here. But then she starts walking the halls, and all these memories come back from when she was a girl there. And when she goes into her old room, she encounters 3 students, and at first starts to yell at them, saying how she could rat them out to Tissaia, but then lets them know that she's not going to do that. She tells them how she stayed in that room when she first arrived, and they ask her about being a mage and going to court. But even after these girls are looking up to her, with the success that she's had, when she looks in that mirror, she still sees the hunchback that first arrived at Aretuza. She then brings the girls to the botanist room and says, I'm going to show you the herb recipes that they don't want you to know about, because they're not allowed to mix herbs. And Yennefer says they don't want you to mix herbs because they want you to come to them for everything. So she mixes herbs and everybody gets high. I mean, everyone's tripping balls in the room. One of the girls mentions how they really shouldn't be doing that. They could get expelled. And she says, there's worse things than getting expelled. I'll show you. And she brings them to the pond where her former friends were turned into eels. Once again, one of the girls tries to leave, and Yennefer says, go ahead, leave. I mean, you have no talent whatsoever, so you'll always have a home here. And that's when she shows them the eels. She tells them how they need to think for themselves because this place uses you. They take any family you ever had, and they force the Brotherhood upon you as a family, making you need them for everything. She's trying to pull back the curtain, or so she thinks, on the entire Brotherhood. To these girls who are just students. Her rant gets interrupted by Tissaia, who sends the girls back to the room and says, you already ruined one life, don't ruin another one. Tissaia and Yennefer then start getting into it, but then Tissaia notices that everyone is rushing into the conference room, and she knows at that moment that Nilfgaard has in fact attacked Cintra. So Yennefer and Tissaia put their differences aside and head into the meeting where they're discussing what to do. Half the room wants to help Cintra, while the other half just wants to let them burn. Because Cintra has always been pretty stuck up. They think they don't need the mages, they don't need their help. But the group that wants to help Cintra doesn't want to help Cintra just because they want to help Cintra. They want to help them because they're worried that if Nilfgaard attacks Cintra and wins, then they'll be coming for Aretuza and the academies and their way of life next. The meeting is then interrupted by Frangilla, who tells them that Nilfgaard is after Cintra and only Cintra. And one of the reasons why they're worried about Nilfgaard attacking Aretuza is because Nilfgaard, along with the advice from Frangilla, has changed a little bit of the teachings and how they do magic. And Frangilla says, yes, we've changed a little bit of things, we've adapted, but while you want us to be brothers, we're more cousins, we're not enemies. And as for the dark magic that you think we do, there's no such thing as dark magic, it's a myth. There's just magic. But even though Frangilla is saying that she's not after Aretuza and their way of life, some people don't buy it, and those people include Frangilla and Tissaia and Vilgefortz. So the head of the Brotherhood, who just so happens to be Frangilla's uncle, says, all right, let's give it to a vote. And the group votes to let Cintra burn. After the meeting, Tissaia pulls Yennefer aside and says even though they lost the vote, a few of them are going to try and help Cintra. Because Aretuza is all she has, and she can't risk Nilfgaard coming and changing her way of life. So if Yennefer doesn't want to help the Brotherhood, do it for her. Do it for Tissaia. And she even asks please, to which Yennefer says, is that the first time you've ever used that word? But desperate times call for desperate measures. Now, Geralt, after getting broken up with, notices the Nilfgaard army heading towards Cintra and knows that there's danger. And because of the pressure he was feeling about claiming his Law of Surprise, he schedules a meeting with Musak to find out what's going on with the child. And he thinks initially that it's a boy, but Musak lets him know, no, it's a girl. It's Princess Cirilla. And she's fine. She's doing great. She's being taken care of by Calante. But then in their private meeting, they hear some commotion, and the Witcher knows that assassins were sent to kill him. So he grabs Musak and forces him to portal them out of there. And when he does so, he just so happens to portal right in the town square where he's standing in front of Calante, who is shocked to see him. He chastises her for trying to kill him and says he's just looking out for the child, but she's reassuring him that the child is fine. He lets her know about the Nilfgaard army coming, but she's very confident, and why wouldn't she be? She's always been confident. She's always won. But Geralt says if there is any doubt whatsoever in your mind that you could lose a war against Nilfgaard, then you should give her to me. I will protect her, and if you win the war, I will be glad to bring her back. And Calante thinks about this and announces to the entire crowd that the Law of Surprise will be honored. She then tells Geralt that she herself will let Ciri know what's going on. So when Geralt walks in, Calante is indeed telling Ciri that it's her destiny, she has to go with Geralt. But when Geralt meets Ciri for the first time, it's not Ciri, it's somebody else's child. Now Geralt doesn't know this. So Calante sends the fake Ciri away and tells Geralt, I'll let you know when she's ready to leave, and then Geralt leaves the room. Musak closes the door with his magical ability, but then as Geralt is walking down the hallway, Musak opens another door. And when he does that, Geralt walks through it, walks down a tunnel, and walks out to the town. And he sees that fake Ciri say goodbye to her friends, and then curtsy to the actual Ciri, calling her Your Highness. And at that moment, Geralt knows he's been played. So he goes to confront Calante one more time, yelling at her, saying, first you tried to kill me with assassins, and now you're trying to play me. But Calante just can't let Ciri go. Ciri is the only family that she has left after Ciri's parents were lost at sea. It's the only memory that she has of her daughter. And frankly, she doesn't believe in destiny. Because the way she looks at it, she let a hedgehog in because of destiny, and all it got her was a dead daughter. And she's not willing to take that chance with Ciri. So she kind of tells Geralt to kick rocks. She then orders Iced, who just showed up, to escort Geralt out of the castle. And as he's doing so, Geralt turns to him and says, you used to honor the Law of Surprise. What happened? He said, well, I had a granddaughter. That's what happened. Ice then asks Geralt to never come back. And Geralt turns to him and says, if Ciri's in danger, I'm going to come back. And Ice says, that's why I have to do this. And he imprisons him. So when the Nilfgaardians overtook the city, Geralt was in a prison below the castle. But once Calante realized what was happening and realized that, hey, maybe I should have followed this whole destiny thing, she told Musak to go down and get him. But he was too late. Geralt had already broken out. When Musak returned, he told Calante he escaped. And she says, well, the good news is there's still hope because he's out there. She then tells him to get Ciri out of the city and tells Ciri to find Geralt of Rivia. He is her destiny. She then jumps out of the castle window. And when she does that, she does so right in front of Geralt, who sees her dead body and is shocked, but also knows that Ciri is in danger. So he heads back into the castle to find out where she is. But at that moment, she was being escorted out, and it was like 2 ships passing in the night. Now, speaking of Ciri, she's made it into a town by herself and is looking to get to Skellig. And that is where Ice is from. She asks somebody how long it would take to get to Skellig, and they say about 7 days by horse, and laughs her off when she asks how long it would take to walk there. She has to barter a family ring to get a pair of gloves, and ends up stealing a horse. When she makes camp for the night, she's overtaken by a bunch of people from Cintra that she recognizes and used to play a game with, and she thinks that they're friends, but she learns quickly that they didn't feel the same way. They start robbing her and yelling at her how they had to let her win because she had a crown, but she doesn't have a crown now. And that's when she drops to her knees being channeled by the white flame. She hears the voice say that the era of the sword and the axe is nigh. And that is something that Kahar said in the previous episode. The voice says a couple other random things, and then Ciri belts out a scream. In the season finale, after Geralt came up empty in the castle, he starts making his way to try to find Ciri. He comes across that refugee camp that was decimated by the Nilfgaardians. And this is the same refugee camp that Ciri was at. When he gets there, he thinks he sees the grave robber, but in fact, it's just a merchant who's trying to bury the dead. Geralt tells him he really should go home, it's not safe there. But the merchant says these people didn't deserve this, and he's going to continue to bury them. And it looks like Geralt leaves. When he does that, some undead monsters come out and attack this guy. And it's looking like he's going to die until Geralt saves his life. Geralt once again tells him, you need to go home. And at this point, the merchant agrees, yeah, I probably should. But when it looks like the merchant goes home, that's when Geralt is attacked by more of this army of the undead. And he's fighting him off, and he is able to do so, but he gets bit in the process. And a bite from these monsters is not good. Most people die from it right away. Geralt collapses, but luckily for Geralt, the merchant didn't go home right away, and the merchant picks him up and is going to try to save his life. So after Geralt collapsed, the person that he was searching for, Ciri, wakes up in the field, having no idea what happened. And she's awoken by the woman whose horse that she stole. Now, this woman had invited her to come along with her because the woman noticed that she was all alone, but instead Ciri decided to steal her horse. And the horse is dead, along with the people from Cintra that were trying to mug her. And the woman doesn't even seem mad about the whole horse situation. She's just more concerned for Ciri and what happened there, but Ciri doesn't really remember. But whatever did happen, everybody died a pretty painful death. And the woman once again invites Ciri to come home with her, and Ciri, who is visibly shook by what happened, agrees to go home with her. When the woman brings Ciri back to her house, she introduces her to her son, and Ciri's not saying a word. That night, they see a flame go up in the sky, and they know that the Nilfgaardian army is close. And the reason the flame is in the night sky is because the mages from Artusa have arrived, and they're going to try to hold off the Nilfgaardian army from advancing to the north. Their whole goal is to not let the Nilfgaardians pass this one place called Sodden Hill, and they only have to hold it for 2 days because they've sent word to Temeria and another kingdom that they need help, and both kingdoms seem to be on their way. And one of the mages who has made the trip is Yennefer, but no one's really sure why. And Vilgefortz questions her about it, but she doesn't give him an answer. So upon arrival at Sodden Hill, they start fortifying the area and getting the entire place prepared for battle. I mean, they leave no stone unturned. That night, they have a big party because it could be everyone's last night on the continent. And during the party, one of the people that Yennefer runs into during the party is Marigold. And she asks her about her experience at Temeria. And she tells her that King Foltest kind of owes her because King Foltest's daughter was cursed. She was a striga. And Marigold was one of the only people who didn't lose faith in curing her. But she didn't do it alone. She hired a witcher, a guy by the name of Geralt of Rivia. And instead of revealing her past history with Geralt, Yennefer just says, yeah, you should be careful of his kind. They're not to be trusted. Yennefer then walks over and talks to Tissaia. And Yennefer's kind of been negative from the jump, and Tissaia wonders why. And she says, well, probably because of the whole we could die situation. And Tissaia says, that's all the more reason to live. And Yennefer makes a joke about the fact that Tissaia's going to live it up tonight with Vilgefortz. Tissaia then asks Yennefer if she's ready to die. And Yennefer says, yeah, because I've lived about 2 or 3 lifetimes. And I haven't been satisfied in any of those. And I've tried, but I have no legacy to leave behind. So it's time to accept that life has no more to give. And Tissaia looks at her and says, "You have so much more to give." Now, while that conversation was going down, the Nilfgaardians, who are very close by, know that the Brotherhood has shown up. And while Cahar and one of his military advisors is going over strategy, they're interrupted by Frangilla, who wants to act quickly. The advisor wants Cahar to wait. He says it's one thing to kill peasants, but this is the Brotherhood we're talking about. They have magic. And Frangilla says, "We have our own magic without rules or restrictions. And I will personally deplete all of them until they're empty and powerless." She can still sense that Cahar is on the fence about what to do, so she decides to put a bow on it and says that their sources are telling her that Ciri could already be in the north. And if those reports are true, then they need to act right now to get past Sodom Hill. And that's when Cahar gives the order to test the Brotherhood's defenses. So that's what Ciri and the woman and her child saw in the sky. It was the Nilfgaardians testing the Brotherhood's defenses, just throwing a couple of shots to see how they react. And they're standing up to the task. So that's when Frangilla gives the order to draw the mages out. And that plan works. Now, at first, the mages at Sodom Hill put up a really good fight. Marigold uses her powers to create these mushroom spores that, when explode, force death upon anybody who smells them. Another one of the mages is just able to snap everybody's neck on the spot. But all of these acts are coming at a cost. They're slowly taking a toll on the mages, depleting their energy source. And even the people at Sodom Hill who don't have powers are firing off arrows and taking a big chunk of the army out. All the while, Yennefer is at the top of this tower watching it all go down and kind of giving commands, speaking to the other mages telepathically. And this includes Vilgefortz, who she gives the order to portal in because Cahar is all by himself. And Vilgefortz and Cahar get into a heated duel, but Yennefer can sense that he's going to lose, and she urges him to slow the battle down. But ego gets the best of him, and he just keeps losing sword after sword, and every time he does, he's creating a new one with his magic, until finally it gets too much. He's bleeding from the nose like he's 11 in Stranger Things, and he can't create another sword. He asks Cahar, "What do you want?" And Cahar says, "To get to the center of it all." And then he kicks him down this hill where he cracks his head on a log and he's knocked out cold. And that's where the tide starts to shift. Things start going south for the mages quickly as Frangilla creates this kind of portal vortex where she has a bunch of archers stand around it. And they're not anywhere near Sodden Hill. But with Frangilla's magic, she's able to create that portal in the infrastructure of Sodden Hill. So all the archers have to do is fire arrows into this thing, and they shoot out in the middle of Sodden Hill, taking out a lot of people. And that's when Yennefer starts to get concerned. Yennefer then tries to communicate with Tissaia, but Tissaia is blowing her off because Tissaia has gone to try to reason with Frangilla. She tells her, "You don't have to do this. You can come back with us." But Frangilla is done listening and neutralizes Tissaia, taking her out. She then uses her magic to burst open the gates at Sodden Hill, and somebody sneaks in and drops this magical box that Frangilla gave him that, when opened up, all these little tiny worms pop out of it. And those bugs are able to slither into some people's ear and manipulate them into doing what Frangilla wants. And one of those people is a mage, along with 2 other kids. The mage gives the 2 kids some bombs, and when Yennefer looks over, she sees the kids are about to drop them in the middle of their fort and knows something's wrong. She turns around to see that mage who is being manipulated, and the mage stabs her. The kids then let off the bombs, and when they do, Yennefer and the mage go flying off the tower. Now, Yennefer is able to land on her feet, but since the mage is being manipulated, she is not, and she ends up sustaining some pretty serious injuries. But when she does hit the ground, she is released from Frangilla's spell and apologizes for what she did. At this point, though, Sodden Hill is destroyed, and all Yennefer can do is look around at the decimated landscape as she's trying frantically to communicate with anybody out there, but most of the mages are dead. Well, one mage that she knows is alive is Vilgefortz, who has woken up and come across one of the mages who is in really rough shape because he was able to take out all of the Nilfgaardian army around him, but it took its toll. And this mage is asking Vilgefortz for help, but instead of helping him, Vilgefortz just bludgeons him to death. Another person that Yennefer can sense is alive is Tissaia, and when Yennefer finds her, Tissaia is barely holding off the Nilfgaard army. And it seems like Tissaia is losing this. When Yennefer finds her, Tissaia drops down to the ground, and Yennefer can tell that she might not make it. Yennefer begs her to keep fighting because the northern kingdoms are close, but Tissaia doesn't say a thing because she doesn't really have anything else to give. And Yennefer, knowing that this could be the last time that they talk, tells her Tissaia saved her and she will never forget that. Tissaia then says that it is her turn to save these people and this continent, and that this will be her legacy. Yennefer says that she can't do it, but Tissaia says, "Yes, you can. Unleash everything. Don't control your chaos. Let it out." So that is exactly what Yennefer does. She takes all that bottled up emotion that she's felt for her entire lifetime and sets fire to every single Nilfgaardian soldier. I mean, she lights them completely up. Now, it is worth mentioning that Cahar and Frangilla aren't a part of this. This is just infantrymen. But she does damage. And right after she does this, King Foltest shows up. So they have done it. They've been able to hold off the Nilfgaardians from advancing in time to get their reinforcements. But as soon as she's done setting fire to pretty much everybody, Yennefer disappears. Fringilla is calling out for her, and even Geralt is calling out for her. Because Geralt is hallucinating pretty badly. He's going in and out, calling for basically any woman he's ever encountered, according to the merchant. But most of his hallucinations center around his childhood. Because Geralt grew up like every other kid, happy-go-lucky with a mom. But his mom abandoned him, left him to become a witcher. And he's never forgiven her for that, and never found out a reason why. So when his mother comes to him in this hallucination, he wants some answers, but he doesn't get them. The dream of his mother implies that she didn't search out for him because she knew that they would be reunited because of their destiny. And this infuriates Geralt. He feels hurt and betrayed by his own mom. And his mom had made mention how all the mages were at the Battle of Sodden Hill, and she was there to heal him back up. And it was because of his slow heart rate being a witcher that actually ended up saving his life. So when Geralt snaps out of this dream, he asks the merchant how far is Sodden Hill from his house, and it's about an hour. But his house is on the way, so Geralt wants to get there as soon as possible. The merchant tells him, look, I'm just a simple merchant. I don't really have any money to give you for saving my life, but what I can offer you is the law of surprise. And Geralt has no interest whatsoever in going down that road again and says, yeah, just get me a beer when we get to your house and we'll call it even. Now, at that same time, Cirilla is going to sleep in her new bed. And the woman is telling her that while the Nilfgaardian army is close, it makes no sense for them to come over here and she has nothing to worry about. Of course, Cirilla knows that they're after her and she has everything to worry about. Right before she goes to bed, the woman makes mention that if the army were to come, she can go peacefully because she had everything in her life that she ever wanted. She had a house, she had a husband, she had a son, but the one thing she didn't have was a daughter, and she feels like it was destiny that she found Cirilla. That night, Ciri has a dream where she can hear all of these people calling for Yennefer's name, and she knows that Geralt is close. So in the morning, she gets up and covertly leaves the house and goes into the woods. And she just misses Geralt of Rivia, who has arrived by the merchant, because the merchant is married to the woman who brought Ciri back. The merchant tells his wife, I found a witcher, he saved my life, and she tells her husband, I found a little girl in the woods. And when Geralt hears that, he remembers what Renfri told him. The girl in the woods will be with you always. And he just has a feeling that if he walks in the woods, he's going to find Ciri, and sure enough, he does. The two see each other for the first time, and they just know that that is my destiny. They end up embracing in a hug, and then Ciri asks him, who's Yennefer? And that is how Season 1 of The Witcher ends. Please consider subscribing to this channel. I would really appreciate it. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you thought this video sucked, give it a thumbs down. Don't forget, there is a share button for a reason. So if you know somebody that likes The Witcher, consider sharing it on your social media platforms. And also, if you want to hear my thoughts on things and not just a recap, I do have a podcast called Scene Invaders. So search that wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks so much for watching.